Morning everybody, Silverbolt here, back from the Transformers review, going to be doing, as per the title page, Bonecrusher. Now, this is going to be the start of what is hopefully planned to be a 7-part series of reviews, one on each Constructicon, and then finally Devastator. Now, two things on that. Firstly, the reason why they all get 6 parts, whereas the other Assault Combiner's only got 1 video for all of them, is because, well, it's Devastator. You know, he is the most iconic of all the Combiners, and I thought that each character deserved his own individual review. The second reason for it is it gives me basically 6 videos worth before I've actually got to go out and buy, well, 5 videos worth, before I've got to go out and buy another hook, because my hook is broken, which means I can't actually form Devastator, because well, hook, of course, is part of the chest component, so, you know, it's going to basically go zunk, zunk, dunk. So it's not really going to devastate very much. So it gives me an incentive to go out and buy Hook. The problem, of course, is finding him, because he's expensive. And the only thing I'll say about it now is I cannot guarantee that they're going to run into consecutive weeks. So I'm not going to have Bonecrusher one week, Hook the next week, Mixmaxter the next week, and so on and so forth. Because I have random decisions when I want to do a Transformers review. However, since I've done Bonecrusher, I will at some point in time, this is where 10 years down the line, I will be doing another review on one of the Constructicons. Anyway, Bonecrusher. We're starting with Bonecrusher because when I was a child, when I was much, much younger, when I was a wee slip of a lad, Bonecrusher was my favourite toy. Now, Bonecrusher loves destruction, and I suppose in some ways you could call him a modern artist. You know, modern artist. You know, one of those weird things who makes a picture of 4 beige triangles and sells it for £360,000. I wouldn't call it art, but blooming heck, I wish I could. Because I'd love to do that. There you go. Flat, 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 flat. Bit of Tipex. There you go. That's £10,000, please. Done. Anyway, digressing. Bonecrusher loves destruction. He loves seeing things destroyed, mainly so that he can rebuild them. And he, in some ways, he's a bit of a perfectionist. He destroys anything that he sees as flawed. And the Decepticons might enjoy all this if they could stop him from destroying every little thing that they've built as well, which is a bit of a problem for them. The Constructicons first show up, and pretty much their first task is to make the machine. They make the machine that Megatron uses, and I believe it's Heavy Metal War. Is it Heavy Metal War? To take over all the abilities of all the Decepticons, so he can fight Optimus Prime in a one-on-one duel. And it is about the only time that you actually see the so-called special abilities of something like, say, Starscream with his cluster bombs. So, got a really runny nose at the moment. And whilst Megatron is fighting the Decepticons, is fighting Optimus Prime, Bonecrusher and the rest of the Constructicons go through into the Autobot base. Now, I don't want to give too much information on what the various Constructicons do throughout the cartoon, because what I'll end up doing is I'll end up saying the exact same thing over and over again in all 7 videos, including Devastator. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it specific exactly to Bonecrusher. Now, Bonecrusher, of course, is one of the ones that speaks primarily to Omega Supreme. Because, as of course it turns out, the Constructicons built Crystal City. One thing I might as well say in this video is the confusion between where the Constructicons actually come from, because in Series 2 you find out that the Constructicons built Crystal City, which was Omega Supreme's territory, which is why Omega Supreme comes to Earth, because he finds out the Constructicons are on Earth. And then Megatron uses some weird tentacly thing, I forget what it's called, to change their personalities into Decepticons. The other one, which comes about in, I believe it's Series 3, is that the Constructicons apparently build Megatron. So Megatron creates the Constructicons as Decepticons, but the Constructicons also create Megatron. Anyone else see the flaw in that? There we go, that's just in the cartoon. The other thing that Bonecrusher does in the cartoon, mainly, is he is the one that suggests... it is Bonecrusher that puts forward the idea in the 1985 movie... No, it wasn't 1985, 1987 movie, of survival of the fittest. And that's a very Bonecrusher-esque thing to do. And so that leads to the Insecticons, Skywalk, Thundercracker being ejected out into space. Okay, now that's it pretty much for the comics and the cartoon. Sorry, now in the comics there's not an awful lot that comes into it. The Constructicons as a whole come into it, but there's no real storylines that focus on Bonecrusher as a rule, because they're just a lot of the Assault stories revolve around all 5 of them. Well, amongst most groups, it happens all around all 5 of them, except maybe the leaders. But that doesn't happen with Bonecrusher. Now, onto the toy itself. Bonecrusher is one of the early release toys. I think I've actually got a name stamp on here. Japan 1980. This is actually older than I am. Well, Japan 80 to 84. Takara Company Limited. This toy is older than I am. This toy is 28 years old. It is, of course, part of the old Diaclone range, but it's part of the early release Diaclone range in that it doesn't have it does have a driver's seat, which is there, but it doesn't have a cockpit. Not like you'd find on, say, the Dinobots and the Insecticons. That's a point. I've still got to do one of the Insecticons, haven't I? Yeah, I do. Transforming it. It's not exactly difficult. The arms fold out like that. That comes up a bit. The legs fold down like this. And slide in. This flops back. That pops up, which is the head. Up. And twist and turn. And done did. And there we have Bonecrusher. And he also has a little gun that goes in there. And of course he comes with Devastator parts. Now, as I was saying, this was my favourite one as a child, and I don't really know why. I don't really understand why this one was my favourite as a child. I mean, it's a very clever little toy, the way the scoop forms the chest plate, except for the fact that it's rather out here. You probably can't see that, but never mind. So the arms don't cross over properly. It is, of course, in the original Devastator colours, as is blatantly obvious, as in the green and the purple, which was so synonymous with Devastator and became synonymous with Devastator throughout the G1 series. The fact that Devastator is probably the one that's retained the most his original ideal. That is of an inhuman wrecking machine. There was, of course, a second generation, a G2 toy of Bonecrusher, as there was with all the Decepticons, and that one was yellow and purple, and it's dark it's dark yellow and purple, dull yellow and purple, and it's vomit-inducing. It really is the most disgusting, one of the most disgusting colour schemes that Hasbro have ever put out on the market. I remember having Bonecrusher as a child. I remember actually having... This is going to be a kick in the teeth for those of you who know a bit what my brother's like. But bear in mind, he wasn't like 8 years old. No, he wasn't. He was... Yeah, about 8 years old at the time. My mother, for Christmas, when I was about 7 or 8... No, I'd have been older. I would have been about 9. Bought me the Devastator Constructicon gift box set. You know, the ones that are going on eBay for about 300 quid? My mother bought me one of them. Probably for back then, about 20 quid. My brother took every single one of the individual combiners, except Constructicons, took them to school and sold them all. Every single one. For about 20p each. The only one he ever got back for, was this one. That was the only one. But then, of course, he hasn't really changed an awful lot since. He's still doing things like taking mobile phone contracts out of my name. Well, he can't do that anymore. But never mind. And that's probably why I think he's my favourite. Now, I really shouldn't hold him like that with my finger sticking out between his legs. But anyway, yes, that is Bonecrusher done. I apologise for the sniffles. I am going to go and severely blow my nose now. But for now, this is Silverbolt with Bonecrusher signing off, saying au revoir, adios, auf Wiedersehen.